So now we come to part 3, and this covers the 1900s, the 20th century. And this is when we get a huge change in the character of Ballynahinch. Maybe the biggest change that ever happened to it in its history, when it transforms from being a market town to being a dormitory town. So in Victorian times, it was a market town. Farmers and their wives came to Ballynahinch on a Thursday, and they sold their agricultural wares. They sold cattle, they sold pigs, sheep, hens, eggs. So they sold those agricultural products to the wider world. But that changes in the 1900s, in the 20th century. There's a huge expansion of housing in the town. So this is a big fundamental change, and it has happened in the past 50 or 60 years in our own lifetime. So here we go, Ballynahinch Buildings, Chronology, Part 3, Ballynahinch becomes a dormitory town. This is what Ballynahinch looked like about 1900, about the beginning of the 20th century. So it's the buildings are all uniform. They're all one design. They're all much the same height, for the simple reason that they're all owned by one landlord, and he dictates how they are built. The other thing is that the streets are empty. There's the only traffic there is one horse and cart and one bicycle. The only time you get traffic in Ballynahinch is on a Thursday, when around 1900, when all the farmers come to Ballynahinch and sell their wares and earn their money. Now, that is about to change starting from about 1914. Here comes social change. At about 1902, the Wyndham Land Act was passed, and it forced all the aristocratic and gentry families to sell their land. So prior to that, Montalto owned all the farms, but the Wyndham Land Act dictated that if a farmer wanted to buy his farm, he was allowed to do that, and he could buy it with a government loan. So one farmer called John Coulter, who lived outside Ballynahinch on the Hillsborough side, and he had built up a nice trade in raising cattle. He grazed cattle, he fattened them up, then he drove them into Ballynahinch, put them on the train, and sent them off to England to be slaughtered in England. And this was called the store cattle trade. And John was making a lot of money out of this. When Montalto were forced to sell their land, John was first in the queue, and he bought a lot of Montalto land. So with the money he was making, then he built this nice butcher shop at the top of Dromore Street. And this is a statement of his wealth. It's not any old shop. It's architect designed. It's designed by Hobart and Heron, a firm of architects, then in Dromore, now in Belfast. They're still going. And built of the most expensive materials. They imported, they didn't paint the walls. The walls had green impregnated into the ceramic brick, and those came from the Fireclay Works in Leeds. So this is a new development. The Montalto and the aristocracy and gentry are being displaced. They no longer dominate the town commercially. And you get a new commercial force in Ballynahinch, and it's the merchant class, in this case a Presbyterian merchant. And there's more. That building in the middle was the Car Estate Office. So farmers didn't own their land up until 1903. They rented the land, and every 6 months they came to the Car Estate Office to pay their rent. Did it with all the shops. The shopkeepers didn't own the shops. They had to pay 6 monthly rent as well. When that system disappears, the cars no longer need an estate office because they no longer have an estate. So what happens is the estate office is bought by another Presbyterian called Andrew Shaw, a grocer. And he turns the old estate office into a grocer's shop. So here's more evidence of the shift in society, that the old order of the gentry running the place is changing, and a new force is obvious in the town with the Presbyterian merchant class. And Andy Shaw goes farther. This is the glebe house. This was the rectory. This is where the local rector lived. In 1869, you got the equivalent of the Wyndham Land Act. You got the disestablishment of the Church of Ireland. So the Church of Ireland could no longer rely on tithes income. And that meant that all these grand manses that were around the countryside attached to the churches, the Church of Ireland could no longer afford to keep a rector inside a mansion like that. So in Ballynahinch and elsewhere, the big old rectories were sold. And who bought the rectory? Andrew Shaw, grocer. Again, the Presbyterian merchant class. So at the beginning of the 1900s, this is where you get the old ruling alliance of church and gentry breaking down, and in Ballynahinch it being replaced by the commercial and merchant class. Here is the first indication of another massive change in Ballynahinch, the arrival of the first motor car. So this photograph is dated to about 1914. So Ballynahinch is still empty, not much traffic, 2 horses and carts on display. But here is the first motor car. Now this is what's going to drive massive change in Ballynahinch over the next 100 years. So if you jump forward 20 years, you can see how much of a change has come. There are still horses and carts, but they are equalled by the number of internal combustion vehicles. Right in the middle of the photograph is a Belfast Omnibus Company bus, which will take you to Belfast. So that is a rival to the train. It's a handier way to get to Belfast than going via the junction. Outside Andy Shaw's shop, Andy is supplying his goods with lorries. Those are petrol lorries there. On the right-hand side, beside the telegraph pole, is Davison's pub and grocery shop. Now, on a Thursday when the farmers came to market, they parked their carts in this junction, and then the horses they were taken round the back of the pubs and stabled in the pub yard. So Davison's have a great idea. if there's an increase in the number of cars, then the cars have to be serviced. So up their entry and in their stable yard, instead of having horses stabled there, they establish a motor works. So there's the sign there, service motor works. So this is the shape of things to come, and the development of the influence of the car on the town. Jump forward another 20 years and the horses have disappeared. And you have the beginnings of Ballynahinch's parking problem. On the square you see a UTA single-decker bus. A serious rival to the railways, Ulster Transport Authority, are a bus company which covers all of the 6 counties. On the left, the Car's estate office has disappeared. It was burned down in a fire in 1937. That was Andy Shaw's grocer's shop at that stage. So then Andy built a modern shop instead. And jump forward even further, the horses have disappeared. It's cars only now. The town is developing utilities, so you've got mains electricity, and there's a telephone pole, and those telephone wires are running all the way from Belfast through Ballynahinch all the way to Newcastle. More developments at Davison's shop. They have given up on it being a pub, but it's still a grocer's shop. Now, to cater for the motoring trade, they've installed petrol pumps on the pavement. So if you wanted petrol, you would call into Davison's and get your grocery order. But you would say to the 2 girls in the shop, Maggie and Frida Davison, that you wanted some petrol. So they would come out onto the footpath with their apron on and deliver petrol to your car at the curbside. So Ballynahinch is gradually accommodating the motor vehicle. Utilities came to Ballynahinch quite late. There was an electricity generator at the bottom of Windmill Lane, but then eventually it was replaced with the Electricity Board for Northern Ireland. There was a gasworks on Gasworks Road, which was later named Antrim Road. But electricity knocked out the gas utility. Mains water and sewage water arrived in Ballynahinch quite late. They didn't come until the 1930s. So up until that stage, your toilet would have been in the town would have been at the bottom of the back garden behind the house. And you didn't have mains water. There was a pump at the top of Dromore Street, and you took a bucket along there and filled the bucket and brought that back to the house. There's the same feature as you saw on Church Street. Here it is on Railway Street. At the bottom of Railway Street, Smiley's had 2 petrol pumps on the edge of the footpath, and farther up the street, McCurbury's at the top. They had 2 pumps up there. In the 1960s, Ballynahinch got its first petrol filling station, Hugh Knox's, and Hugh had a good idea. He put it on the main road. He put it on the main road out of Ballynahinch, running towards Belfast. So that filling station has been redeveloped 3 or 4 times, and this is the latest iteration now. And there were other filling stations on other roads around Ballynahinch. So they discovered that the owner of the filling station discovered that he could stock cigarettes or he could stock minerals, beverages, he could stock newspapers, and he could get a profit on them. And then he discovered that you could add on a small supermarket. And then as the years went on, the supermarket got bigger. So what's happening with this is that you roll up to get your petrol, but then the supermarket is there, so you can do a good bit of your weekly shopping there. Now that damages the existing shops in the centre of Ballynahinch, where a lot of trade is now being diverted to the periphery of Ballynahinch. So you start to get the core of Ballynahinch being hollowed out in commercial terms. Now here is where we start the expansion of housing in Ballynahinch town, starting in the 1950s. Just after the war ended in 1945, a lot of austerity in the 1950s, and a great shortage of housing. You couldn't have got a house, and you couldn't have got a house of good quality. But governments after World War I, they founded the National Health Service, they founded the welfare state, and there was massive programs of public housing, and that affected Ballynahinch as well. So the first example of public housing in Ballynahinch was the Crube Park housing estate, followed then by Windmill Gardens, and then followed by the Langley estate, running right into the 1960s. So now there is no shortage of housing, and these are they're not luxurious houses, but they're built to a good standard. So there is availability of housing, and you live in healthy surroundings. So previously, if you lived in Ballynahinch was just 6 streets, and if you lived in Ballynahinch, you lived on a house which was on a street. But now that changes. So the orange marking shows you where the new public housing was built. So they're not built on the street. They are built in new estates, and they're not built in the centre of Ballynahinch, except for Hillcrest. They're built on the periphery. So this is Ballynahinch expanding, and again, it's not expanding in the centre; it's expanding out on the periphery. So then you wonder what happens to the centre, and we'll find out. Fairly soon, you got expansion of private sector housing in the 1960s, and the first private estate to be developed in Ballynahinch was here at Churchview. And these houses went up pretty rapidly. They're wooden framed, so they're prefabricated, so they go up pretty fast. But then there's a brick skin, so they're sound houses and long lasting, and they went up in the 1960s. That was followed by a flood of private sector housing. So at the top there you see Chilton Drive and Drumhill and Moss Road. On the right hand side you see the largest private sector housing development in Ballynahinch, Carlisle Park. Bottom left you get Kindale and Knockdean. And then in the centre, you get Churchview, the Drumlands, and Connor Park. So you see by the size of the blue areas that the private sector housing is overtaking the orange areas, which are the public sector. And that, so Ballynahinch is changing. Up until World War I, Ballynahinch district had largely a rural population. If you study the World War I recruits, there was plenty of them came from Ballynahinch, but most of them came from Ballynahinch district, and they lived out in the countryside, and they had rural occupations like ploughman or in charge of horses. But from the 1950s, that rural population started moving into the town. It didn't mean that farmers went out of existence, but it meant that the population growth was not in the countryside, but in Ballynahinch. And that meant you got a rapid expansion of the town's population. Now that expansion keeps on going. And the private developers, wherever they can get a square inch available in Ballynahinch, they plant it out in houses. So Belfast Road and Crossgar Road, you get Drummond Bray, Cedar Hill, the sidings, and Windmill Hill built. Out to the Dromore Road, you get Clonwilliam Court. Behind Crew Park, you get Wood Ridge. Out the Lisburn Road, at this stage, most of the private sector development is happening out the Lisburn Road. So you get Lord Mora Park, Eden Grove Park, and the Lime Trees. And behind Langley, you get Willowbank, Riverview Heights, and Rivercroft. So the green areas are disappearing, and they're being covered by brick. So when you're driving into Ballynahinch, the signage says Ballynahinch Market Town, but actually it's not a market town any longer. You have a Thursday market, but it's not. It hasn't got its original purpose of selling agricultural products for the farming community. And a lot of the agricultural sales have moved out of Ballynahinch. The cattle sales and the pig sales, they've moved to Downpatrick or Rathryland. So if a Ballynahinch farmer wants to sell the cattle now, he puts them on the back of a lorry and off they go to the sales. The population of Ballynahinch has increased, but that population isn't employed in Ballynahinch. Some of it is, but most employment opportunities are outside Ballynahinch. And for shopping, there's shopping in Ballynahinch, but the best opportunities for shopping are elsewhere now, in Sprucefield or still in Belfast. So the population of Ballynahinch sleeps in Ballynahinch and socialises in Ballynahinch, but it gets its employment. A lot of the population gets its employment outside Ballynahinch and does a lot of its shopping outside Ballynahinch. So the nature of the town has changed. It's not truly a market town now. It's a dormitory town. There is some factory provision in Ballynahinch. Plessy arrived in 1953, and that electronic firm is still busy. But the point is that there is not enough industrial provision in Ballynahinch to give employment to the increasing population of the town. Every approach road around Ballynahinch, and this is one of the quietest roads. This is Riverside Road, but every road develops a new estate of bungalows. If you have extra houses, then you need extra provision of utilities. So for a good while out Lisburn Road, they got into trouble with the sewers. The sewers couldn't cope with the extra housing that was built out the Lisburn Road. So the first thing that had to happen on this road was improvement of the sewers. And then you're going to need extra electricity provision. And, well, why not have some gas provision? So 2017, then Phoenix Gas started digging up the streets. And if you want gas now, you have the alternative to heating your house. Instead of using oil, you can use gas. Let's have a look at how the car has become king. The big employers are elsewhere, principally in Belfast, and essential services like health or education are in Belfast or Lisburn or Downpatrick. So if you want employment, or if you want education, or if you want to see a hospital consultant, you have to travel mostly by private car. And the principal shopping centres like Sprucefield or Forestside, they're in Belfast. To access those services in Belfast, Downpatrick, Lisburn, you need transport, and that transport is generally by car or to Belfast by bus. So this is where you have a dependence on the internal combustion engine. And in the previous episode, I told you how Ballynahinch was, in the Victorian period, Ballynahinch was self-sufficient. Shoes were made in Ballynahinch, clothing was made in Ballynahinch, corn was ground in Ballynahinch. If you needed a new clock, there was a clock maker in Ballynahinch. Now that is now finishes. In the 1900s, the town is no longer self-sufficient. So food, fuel, medicines and consumer goods all have to be imported in quantity to an increasing population. And you're dependent on vans and lorries to bring those. At this stage, after 1958, it's no longer the train which is supplying Ballynahinch. The train is gone, so it's vans and lorries which are doing the supplies. Belfast and County Down Railway folded in 1958 due to competition from buses, cars and lorries. If you think of it, the train can shift a lot of goods between fixed points, but it's only between fixed points. When the train arrives in Ballynahinch, then you're dependent on something else to get to your destination. You don't have that disadvantage with the car. The car will take you from your front door to wherever you want to go, providing there's a road there. So that's big competition for the train. The train can't stand the competition. In Ballynahinch, the train finishes in 1958. Trains are only viable on high-density routes like Bangor to Belfast. Ballynahinch grew because there was convenient, reliable motor transport, giving essential connections with the rest of the country. So Ballynahinch would not have grown if it hadn't been for the availability of cars. And if you were building a new house in Ballynahinch, then it had to have provision for a car. Or for two cars for many families. So all the new bungalows being built, they would have a garage attached or a carport or a parking space. So the town could not exist without a daily supply of essentials by lorry and van from outside, and the town is no longer self-sufficient. A lot of the housing growth started out Lisburn Road. So Robert and I went up this drumlin, and he'll run a video and with me saying that I remember all that land in front of us being green fields. So where you see Langley, the Langley development, that used to be Tom Poole's fields. And I remember him bringing his cattle out to graze there, and then at tea time he took them back in the road to be milked. Where you see Churchview, that used to be some of John Coulter's. I said that John Coulter bought land from Montalto, so that Churchview was John Coulter's meadow. Farther out where you see Lord Morra and Kindale, that is another part of John Coulter's farm on the other side of the river. So over the 50s, 60s, 70s, if you were up on this hill, you could see this pasture land gradually disappearing below brown brick. I'm standing here on a drumlin overlooking the Lisburn Road in Ballynahinch, and I've come up here to demonstrate the change in Ballynahinch over a period of about 60 years. So the hills that you can see ahead of me and the river plain you can see to the left, the river meadows, I can remember them being grazing land. But dead ahead of us, the hill you can see is now covered with the Langley Estate. And I remember Jack Poole grazing his dairy cows there. And I remember at tea time he used to bring the dairy cows past Lisburn Street and took them up to the byre in High Street, milked the cows there, and then walked the cows back out to that grazing land you see opposite us. Then immediately at the bottom of this hill, you see an assembly of brown bricks called Churchview. That was a water meadow owned by the Coulter family, and that Langley was the first large-scale public housing built, and Churchview was the first large-scale private housing being built. Then over on the left, as we go farther along the Lisburn Road, those were all meadows owned by the Coulters. The Coulters were a family of graziers. And now each of their fields has been renamed as a housing development. So the order of the fields now is Lord Mora Park, then Kinedale, then Edengrove Park, then Lime Trees, and still further building going on. So nothing could better illustrate the change in Ballynahinch from an agricultural economy to Ballynahinch being a place where the fields now grow bungalows. And Ballynahinch has ceased to be an agricultural and market town and is now a residential area and a dormitory town. And there's the maps there. Top there on the right-hand side, that was a long meadow at the end of Antrim Road, and that was Coulter grazing. So that's where you first got the first private development in Ballynahinch, Churchview. Then cross the river, and that's still Coulter's farm. And you got, first of all, Kinedale Park established there, and then in later years, Lord Mora Park and Edengrove Park and Lime Trees. So the Coulter pasture totally filled up with housing. And then the next farm is Tommy Smiley's. So Edengrove Park has now been extended. You can see that Tommy Smiley's farm is cleared for building. So Edengrove Park North is being built there. So you see the social change that in 1903 this was Montalto land. Then it was bought by Coulter, John Coulter the grazier. And then you get to the 60s, 70s, 80s, and this land then finds its way into the hands of housing developers. So the land is much more valuable for housing development than it is for grazing. Rod Whitworth took his drone and flew the drone out over these estates. The photograph top left was taken in the 1950s, and it shows Coulter's Meadow. And then below that, where you see the arrow, it shows how that L-shaped meadow gradually got filled up with housing. And then cross the river, come out Lisburn Road, and there's Coulter's fields gradually being absorbed by Lord Mora and by Kinedale. Same thing is happening on the other side of the river, out Riverside Road. You get Weaver's Close, and you can get Clanwilliam Court being built there. So the town is gradually expanding on the periphery, and the town boundary is constantly expanding. And here you can see how field after field on the Coulter farm was gradually absorbed. Where you see the yellow arrows, if you look along the length of that, you can see that the original field boundary hedge is still there. The developers left. They took over another field, but they left the field hedge, and you can see where the original fields actually were. And as I say, on the right-hand side, Tommy Smiley's farm now beginning to be absorbed, the land cleared, and Eden Grove Park North being built on it. So the process is still ongoing. Up to the present day, the yellow boxes show the most recent developments. So at Belfast Road, you get Moss Lane. Out the Mohernock Road, you get Willow Lane and Mohernock Park. And as I said, out the Hillsborough Road, you get Eden Grove Park being built. A bit of social housing being built in Ballynahinch. So the green boxes are Bally River Walk halfway down Dromore Street, and Riverside Meadows out the Dromore Road. Out the Riverside Road. Not enough social housing going on. The original social housing is marked in orange. So that was the original housing, executive housing. But a lot of those orange developments have ceased to be public housing because remember you had the Thatcher Right to Buy initiative. So a lot of those houses marked orange are now in private ownership. In Belfast, there aren't enough houses being built for the population. So there's housing stress. It's hard even to rent a house in Belfast, and the rents are going up like mad. And you've got a new development in Belfast of homelessness. It's people who are homeless not because they're alcoholic or drug addicts. It's because they can't afford the current rents. So there are people living on the streets in Belfast now, decent people who simply can't afford housing. Now you wonder how long it'll be before that phenomenon hits Ballynahinch. There are some families in Ballynahinch who've been declared homeless, so they're now living in B&B accommodation. So our new Labour government are promising a big expansion of housing, and that'll be affordable housing. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out in Ballynahinch. If you get a repeat of the 1950s and 60s, where you get large new public housing estates. If the town was expanding, then you had to get an expansion of the churches. I mentioned that the First Presbyterian Church always seemed to be ahead of the game. They were the first church to be built in Ballynahinch town. They were the first to renew their church in Ballynahinch in 1751, and First Presbyterian were the first to expand with a new set of halls in the 1960s. Other churches followed suit. St Patrick's expanded. They built a new wing. And they built a new hall, and Robert can show you some video footage of that site. There's the church on a hill and the new hall beside it. The Methodists, they expanded. They doubled the size of their building. They kept the old church as a whole and then built a new church beside it. And then down the side below the church, they built new halls. And again, Robert has got some video footage of that. The Baptists rebuilt the church 3 times. Sorry, they rebuilt it twice. The first rebuilding is the building on the extreme right-hand side, and the second rebuilding is the huge building on the left-hand side. It's more like a basilica than a church. And the Congregational Church, they expanded as well. They put extra accommodation on the church, and they built a huge new hall behind it. There was a lot of public expenditure in the town beginning in the 1950s for the housing, and the state spent a lot of money on schools. In the last video, I showed you that in the Victorian period, all the churches had an attached primary school under state auspices, but on church property. So all those, in the 1950s, all those schools on church property were amalgamated and brought into state ownership. So all those primary schools were now concentrated on one site in Crib Park. And interesting enough, that Crib Park primary school was built on the site of the Battle of Ballynahinch. As was the Crib Park housing estate beside it. You got the establishment of higher education in Ballynahinch. The school was built on the Belfast Road. At that stage it was called the Intermediate School, now it's called the High School. And you got the technical school built at the same time out on Church Road. You got the same kind of state investment into the health sector, so that previously all the GPs all had their private premises and surgeries around the town. So again, they were all amalgamated. First of all, beside the library, there was a new clinic built there, and all the GPs moved in there in the 1970s. But afterwards, a new clinic was built, the Montalto Medical Centre. Now, I think this might be owned by the GPs. We're finding that that the health service is under strain. After the pandemic, the hospitals can no longer cope with demand, and a lot of that demand is being decanted onto the GPs. And the GPs can't cope with that demand. In our time, we got this new clinic arrived, but you wonder what its future is. There are a lot of dentists have gone private now, and you'll only get dentistry in the private sector. And there are some hints that the GPs might go the same way. So you wonder what the future will be for this clinic in Ballynahinch and in other towns, if you'll get private sector GPs. I showed you the churches expanded in Ballynahinch. The state schools were re-established in Ballynahinch. The church sector in Ballynahinch, their schools are all redeveloped later. So one of the most outstanding rebuilds was the Assumption Grammar School, and it's one of the most prominent buildings in Ballynahinch, and on one of the best sites on top of a drumlin. The Catholic Primary School on Main Street used to be on the edge of the street. It was completely rebuilt as well, and the secondary sector, St Coleman's, was built brand new out Crossgar Road. And you got the integrated sector. This building used to be the Southeastern Education Library Board headquarters up on Windmill Hill. So it was demolished, and it's now been replaced by Ballynahinch's first integrated school, Drumlin's Integrated. With an expanding population, you need provision for the elderly. So first off, you had W.J. McCormick's private house sold and turned into Redburn Clinic. You got Private housing developers, Radius Housing, they built Riverview House. The old flax market in Ballynahinch, the Fold Housing Association, they turned it into Hamilton Fold. And then out the Mockernach Road, Spa Nursing Homes, they're a conglomerate with homes at the Spa and at Carryduff. They own Oak Ridge Care Home. So big expansion housing the elderly. You got development of the leisure sector in Ballynahinch. Previously, Spa Golf Club was at Spa, and you had a small clubhouse there. But then the golf course switched to the other side of the Montalto Estate into out the Ballynahinch Road, and then the golf club built a new clubhouse with a restaurant attached and a big membership. In the same district in Ballynahinch, Ballynahinch Rugby Club, which used to play in a couple of fields in Ballynahinch, they bought an entire farm in Ballynahinch. So they're one of the most prominent rugby clubs in Ireland, and they have a series of pitches up in Ballynahinch, and a bit of trouble parking. So on a Saturday, you couldn't get near the place for the crowds. Talking about the leisure centre, when Andy Shaw died, he bought the old rectory. When he died, a developer bought the rectory, and he bought the Millbrook Lodge. He bought the rectory land, so he turned it into a hotel. So he preserved the old rectory building, but he put a new extension to it, and he kept on putting extensions to it. Ballynahinch's most important building, we're still talking about the 1900s now, so about 1970, Ballynahinch's most important building, Montalto House, it's getting into trouble. Whoever owned Montalto always had an income from renting farms and houses, but that system ended in 1903 with the Wyndham Land Act. So you always needed a big income to maintain a big house, and that income disappeared. So ever after that, whoever owned Montalto had trouble maintaining the big house. So the Carrs, they went into bankruptcy about 1912. The Clanwilliams took over, and they struggled to keep the house the way it ought to economise Lord Clanwilliam, the most recent Lord Clanwilliam. He knocked down the servants' quarters at the back, and he knocked down the ballroom on the left-hand side to try and economise. But still, he couldn't generate a sufficient income to keep the house in good order. He sold the house 1979. It was bought by an industrial conglomerate, the Hogg and Curry families. They had disaster in 1985. There was an accidental fire, so it burned out the rear wing and it burned out part of the east wing. Very fortunate that those are the wings which were destroyed, because the best architecture is in the front wing and in the west wing. So thankfully they were preserved from the fire. If you can't look after a big house like that properly, this is the kind of thing that happens. The roof starts leaking, and then the water starts ruining the beautiful plaster ceilings. And then those ceilings are built on timber structures. So the water gets into the timber and starts rotting the timber, and then that brings down even more of the ceiling. The water comes down the wall and then goes for the joists of the floorboard. So a time came when Lord Clanwilliam wouldn't let anybody into this room because the floorboards were rotten, and you were likely to go down through it into the floor below. So at the time Montalto was sold This is the state that it was in. It badly needed repairs. Then you had a massive fire. So this is Ballynahinch's most important building. So is it going to be preserved, or will it be demolished? I talked about what happened during partition in Ballynahinch when you got a bit of trouble. You got further trouble in Ballynahinch in the 1970s and 1980s. And you got two bombs, one in 1973 and one in 1985. And both bombs were placed at this junction. And the bomber's idea was, if you put it at a crossroads where there were three roads, then three roads got the buildings on three streets got destroyed: High Street, Church Street, and Dromore Street. Big destruction at the top of High Street, and Murray's department store used to be called Murray's, then King's, then McCoubrey's. So the department store got wiped out by the bomb. Here you can see what happens if you put the bomb at the junction. It takes the front out of all the shops along the street, and it takes the roof off. You can see all the tiles gone. These photographs are brilliant. They were taken by Bobby Hanvey at the time, and he's put them onto an internet archive at Boston College. So it shows you precisely the damage which was done by the bomb, particularly to Murray's department store on the right-hand side. There's a close-up, so you can see the parapet at the top. You see the crack running along the bottom of the parapet, and then down below the parapet on the right-hand side, you see the crack running down the main wall. So, in other words, that building is now imminently going to collapse. If you breathe on it, it's going to fall down. So, the boys arrive in the planning office, the surveyors take a look at it, and they decide that the building just isn't viable. In the middle is Eddie McGrady, later the MP. At that stage, he was chairman of Down District Council. So the decision is taken that the building can't be preserved. It has to be demolished. It was one of the finest buildings in Ballynahinch. Sir Charles Brett said, a handsome three-storey block with a balustrade at the roofline, cast iron arcade, tall and ornamental door case with exotic fruit in the brackets. Prominent feature in Ballynahinch for 100 years, but it has to go. So within hours, the diggers come and it's demolished. And there we have Enoch Powell, who at that time was the MP for South Down. So Enoch standing among the ruins. The building replaced, it was McCoubrey's when it was destroyed by the bomb, and another part of the McCoubrey family, they replaced it. The troubles affected other buildings in Ballynahinch. Here was Kelly's paint store, where it was burned out with incendiary bombs. And Jackie Brown's, its hardware store, it suffered the same fate, burned out with incendiaries. Now, Ballynahinch lost Murray's department store, but there was no permanent effects of Kelly's being burned out and Jackie's been burned out. Those buildings got repaired, and Robert can show you some video footage of this junction, and you wouldn't know that there had been a bomb here. So Ballynahinch got off relatively lightly during the Troubles. During the Troubles in the 1800s, the rioting focused on the RIC barracks at the top of Railway Street. It was replaced by the RUC barracks. Here it is, out Church Road. Society has changed. You no longer need a static barracks. You can police the countryside with large central barracks and constables out on patrol in vehicles and being controlled by radios and mobile phones. So you no longer need a static barracks. So this police station, Ballynahinch, and many other police stations right around the county are closed. The troubles affected this police station. There was one RUC officer shot dead at the gate there in April 1987. So that's the story of Ballynahinch during the 20th century, during the 1900s, when you got a big change in the character of the town. We'll move on to part 4 after we have a cup of tea.